Why is each place on Earth unique? A place is simply a point on the Earth's surface. For example, K14 at Mesquite High School, or Jack in the Box, or Town East Mall. There's a saying you'll be hearing a lot in this class, and that is, place matters. That simply means that where you are, it really does matter, and that every place is not the same, and that people need to be aware of the unique characteristics of an area. There are 4 ways that we can identify a place. The first one is by its toponym or place name. The second is its site. The third is its situation. And the fourth way to identify a place is its mathematical location. Toponyms. When you see the T on this slide, it means toponym. Toponym is simply the vocabulary word for a place name. And it's pretty simple. It's just the name given to a place on the earth. Examples are Mesquite, Dallas, St. Paul, Lucky Pass, Telephone. Yes, there's a town in Texas called Telephone. They can come from things like people, events, physical features, objects, etc. There's so many different categories of place names, I can't even list them all here, but there's a bunch. And toponyms can change over time because of voting, because of wars, because of the removing of offensive names, and basically for any reason that people want to, like a place name can be changed. Next is the site of a place. Site is simply the physical characteristics of a place, like its climate, its topography, the soils, vegetation, its latitude, which we'll get into in a minute. Latitude's super important, as well as elevation. And site factors are really important when building a city, or even like building a business or a factory, or really when you build anything, you need to look at the site of a place. Example, do you want to build your city or building in the hills or on plains? Do you want to build your city on the coast or maybe in the interior of an area? Those are all very important. Next is the situation of a place. Situation is the location of a place relative to other places. An example of that would be like the Jack in the Box is across the street from Country Burger. That is an example of giving the relative location of a place or its situation. You may hear another term for situation is often used is relative location. There's the relative location or the situation of a place is important for 2 reasons. One, we can find new places based on our knowledge and our comparisons to familiar places, fam meaning familiar here, and 2, we know the importance of a place based on what's around it. And the example I use here is New Orleans. New Orleans is really important. The city of New Orleans is it's important because it's right on the Mississippi River, where it basically dumps out into the Gulf of Mexico, and it has a very large port. So we know that New Orleans is important based on the things that are around it, so to speak. Next is mathematical or absolute location. Just as situation is also known as relative location, mathematical location is also known as absolute location. So if you hear either of those words, they mean the same exact thing in the context of geography. Mathematical and absolute means the same. A way you can remember this is that absolute means exact. Absolute means exact. The exact location. And we find the exact location of a place using latitude and longitude lines. Latitude and longitude lines are imaginary lines drawn on maps or globes that help us basically give a numerical location to a place. It makes navigation very easy. It's what GPS and map navigation is all based on, is latitude and longitude. So longitude is the first set of lines that we'll talk about. The lines of longitude connect at the north and south poles, and they are called meridians. It's a very important concept you need to know. The term meridian means a longitude line running north and south. A way to remember longitude is simply thinking about it like this and using this hand gesture: longitude, longitude, longitude. All right. Those lines are measured in degrees of between 0 and 180 east of or west of the 0 degree longitude line, which is known as the prime meridian. Right here on this little diagram I've drawn, you see down here is the 0 line of longitude, known as the prime meridian. Everything on this side of the prime meridian is known as east longitude. Right here, east longitude. Everything on this side of the prime meridian is known as west longitude. So when you look at the coordinates of a place, it's always given, it always has longitude coordinates that are measured in east or west of the prime meridian. And then there's latitude, which is the other part of the mathematical location of a place. Latitude are imaginary lines that are drawn parallel to each other, meaning that they are drawn like this, okay? Parallel to the equator, which is the middle or 0 line of latitude. I hope you've heard of that before. And here's the important thing: they never touch. These are basically like imaginary rings that go around the planet, and they never ever touch, ever. Longitude lines all meet at the north and south poles. Latitude lines do not ever touch. And they are measured in degrees between 0 and 90, north or south of the equator. And all places on Earth have an exact latitude and longitude coordinates. That makes it, again, easier to navigate to a place. So let's look at this diagram right here. Here is our prime meridian. No, false. This is the equator. This is the equator right here. It's drawn green because I want it to stick out from the rest of the lines because it's super important. The equator is at 0 degrees latitude. Everything north of the equator is given in degrees north latitude. For example, like 45 degrees north latitude means that it's north of the equator. And then everything south of the equator is given in degrees of south latitude. And the final point here, it's really important, kind of goes into back to the site factors deal, is that latitude has a huge impact on the climate of a place. Places that are closer to the equator usually have warmer climates, or right next to the or right on the equator, it's very tropical. It's usually warm or hot all year round, usually very rainy. As you go further away from the equator in both sides, either north or south, when you get to the middle latitudes here, which is what we're in Texas, you get what's called a temperate climate, which means that you have 4 distinct seasons. You have spring, summer, autumn, and winter. And near the equator, you may not have a winter. You may not have 4 distinct seasons. Then when you get really far north or really far south of the equator, it's cold all the time. It's basically the opposite of tropical. You don't have 4 seasons at the poles. It's basically cold all the time. You have like a cold season and then a really cold season. An easy way to remember latitude are 2 ways. One is the phrase latitude, flatitude, meaning that the lines are flat and they basically run parallel to each other. Another way that I've heard it said before is latitude, like basically you think of the lines as like ladders that you can climb up. There you go.